Hello, welcome back to Turn One Talk. We're going to be talking about some of the news this week with no races to discuss. Obviously, we're in the week gap between Monza and Baku. We're going to start off by talking about Adrian Newey going to Aston Martin. Basically, at this point, confirmed. All the big news sources talking about it. So, what do you think about it, Tom?
Well, it's quite interesting, isn't it? The fact that it's reported to be 150 million pounds that they've spent on getting him over. Uh, Insane stuff. I mean, that's more than Hamilton's contract going to Ferrari, isn't it? Wasn't his 100 million or 100
Too much.
million? It was too much. Some people say, others say absolutely worth it. But yeah, I think there's two places that he could have gone to, Ferrari or Aston Martin. Obviously, Ferrari being a difficult part with the fact that the factory is based out of Maranello in Italy. And as we've said previously on the last podcast, it's very hard to get any any of the top staff that circulate Formula One out of the heart being near London. But yeah, it's quite an astronomical move and one that we'll only probably see the actual fruits bird from it in 2027, not 2026, surely. Because he's due to get the start potentially summer of 25.
Is he not allowed to start in March of 25?
Um,
I think he's allowed to start in
yes,
March of
but I
25.
don't know if 3 months makes that much difference.
Probably not. You probably are right, but I don't know if I think Aston's been reported. Aston were looking at ways to try and come to some sort of arrangement where they could have him start from an earlier point. Again, like you say, I think probably 27 is when we're likely to see a very, very competitive car. But he doesn't. He's not the be all and end all. He's obviously got a proven track record of success, but there have been times in his career where it hasn't played for him.
Yeah,
Um, it's not the be all end all. It's not the absolute certainty. Okay, now we're going to win the championship in 27 or 26. But it's a big confidence boost for
yeah,
everyone in that team. When you bring someone like Adrian Newey into your team, who's a proven winner, 26, 27 titles that he's got to his name over constructors
something
and
like
drivers
that. Yeah,
championships. It's a ridiculous number.
Williams,
He's
McLaren, and
Red
obviously Red
Bull.
Bull.
Yeah, proven winner. It's going to bring a big morale boost to the team. I think they'll be competitive in 26 anyway. 27, if he's on board, hopefully we'll see Aston Martin competing for the World Championship, and that'll be good. Obviously, some things have got to happen in between there to get them right up to the front. It's if it happens, and I think everyone's now saying it's basically confirmed.
Yeah,
Big amount of money, but it's worth it for a man of that caliber. It's not, as I said, not a proven guarantee, but it's just probably as close signing as a good signing like that as you could make.
yeah, yeah. It's not guaranteed, but it's at the same time, as you said, a morale boost for the team. But as you also said, or lended to, Formula One is made up of a lot of moving parts. Adrian Newey being a very key instrumental part to that team now, if he is moving there, it's basically confirmed. I mean, if BBC reports on it, usually they don't report on anything unless there's a pretty big rumor behind it. They're not a very gun ho kind of news outlet. Sometimes a little bit biased, but other than that, pretty accurate. Um, to subsidize the 150 million, it's been reported that he's been offered shares in Aston Martin as well. What do you think about that in terms of that's maybe more than 150 million with the upward trend Aston Martin has had as a brand ever since Lawrence Stroll took over?
Yeah, I mean it's great for him.
Yeah, it's great for
I'm
him.
sure it's great for him. I'm sure it's a big factor in making that move. But you got to think to yourself, I don't think he's going to really care too much about 150 million if it's with shares, with not with shares. He's just going to be sitting there thinking to himself, okay, well, I've got everything I need now. I've got the team behind me. There's no sort of internal politics. He's capable and basically been given the reins to make that car. And I think we'll see him thrive at Aston Martin if that's the case. I saw reports he's going to be leading an engineering super team, quote unquote. And if that is the case, and it isn't just they've got all their stuff coming together now, yeah, that'll be good.
Why not Ferrari, do you think? Other than the fact that They are based out of Italy. I mean, that is the most obvious one that we could always just point to straight away. Do you think there are other factors towards it though?
Yes, he'd already worked on that Aston Martin car, hadn't he? The Valkyrie, is it?
Yeah.
Is that the case? He's got ties there. You know, without saying okay, well, he's got to go to Ferrari. He wouldn't go to Ferrari because it's too far away. It's more, I think, the case of Aston Martin's round the corner.
Yeah.
150 million is basically getting your car for 15 minutes, do your job, come home for 5 years, guaranteed to produce in a team which has had all these new developments, a driver like Fernando Alonso in the car, possibilities down the line of bringing in more world-class drivers. You're going to think to yourself, that's where I want to go. Ferrari is a little bit more political. It's a little bit more, well, we'll give you this amount of control over these things, but if we don't agree with you, we'll still intervene. Whereas Aston Martin will just be like, okay, you build us a car, you design this car for us, and we'll have everyone work around what you want to do with it. And I think that's probably what he wants this time in his life. He's not won 27 world championships, 26 world championships to be told by some Italian guy how to build a car. So
Yeah, fair enough. He's also, the timing of it lines up with Aston Martin's new wind tunnel coming in to play. And people joke around about him always using a pen and paper or a pencil and paper to draw these F1 cars out. But it's in history, or in the past, sorry, it has been shown that he also does like to be at the cutting edge of technology. They use augmented reality headsets to actually design the cars now. It's not just pen and paper. And that being at the very leading edge of technology, I assume, is also a pull as well. Ferrari's wind tunnel is probably one of the best. However, with it not being up to date or up to standard or any reported upgrades as of recent, you've got to imagine that Aston Martin with the 2026 wind tunnel or 2025 wind tunnel, they're going to be in a pretty good place to hit the ground running in terms of design features.
Yeah, I just think that if everything comes together for them now, Aston Martin will be a real force to be reckoned with.
Hopefully,
if you're a driver, you'd be wanting to be getting yourself one of those seats. Obviously, as we see it at the minute, it probably is only one seat that's available, really.
Yeah.
And it's not the driver that's apparently got the contract, which is a very strange one for the sport. But you'd be thinking to yourself, that's where you want to be. I'd say even if you're in a Leclerc, if you're even Hamilton, if Alonso dips out of the sport, if you're someone like that after your 2 years with Ferrari, if you could get an Aston Martin for 27, you'd be wanting to get into that. If you're Max Verstappen, you'd be wanting to try and get in an Aston Martin, wouldn't you?
So why do we think that Aston Martin is still holding on to Lance Stroll? I mean, his track record at the moment, he has beaten an aging Alonso on an occasion. However, he's still not exactly providing the results of a driver in his position with as many career years as he's got in Formula One. You'd feel at this point he should be on par, if not out qualifying and out racing. And this is no dig at Fernando Alonso, but a 43-year-old Fernando Alonso, whose championships came over 20 years ago as of next year when we get into the season.
Yeah, okay, you saved yourself there.
Yeah.
So things with Stroll, very simply put, I'm a big fan of the man on the wall behind me, Vettel. In those 2 years against Vettel, he was 21 to 19 against him. Now, we all know Vettel was on the edge of leaving the sport. We all know that he in the second half of that year, he was really let down by some poor displays by the team, some mistakes, but more so, especially in the last bit, we actually had pace. The team really let him down. And we know this, and it is circumstantial, I know. But Stroll did a really good job against Vettel in those years. It has to be said. It is what it is. Now, the Stroll fans will be looking at that going, well, that's enough evidence to determine he deserves his spot in the sport. He beat a 4-time world champion. He has had enough performances when you look at and go, that was a special performance. The pole, being on the front row in 2017. The issue is he's been so few and far between with the performances that he's not going to be able to give you a Constructors' World Championship if your car is not completely and utterly dominant. Is the likelihood that in 26 that car is going to be absolutely dominant? No, more than likely it won't be. You've got Mercedes with their engine. Everyone's really, really hyping up their engine for 2026. You've got Audi coming into the sport. You've got McLaren that will be firing on all cylinders. Red Bull with their new powertrain. It's not going to be cut and dry. So I don't personally think you can win a world championship with Lance Stroll alongside the driver. I just don't think you can.
Yeah.
But I understand why Aston Martin have held on for so long in making a decision about possibly moving him on to WEC or moving on to another category. He isn't an awful driver. He's not as bad as everyone makes
No,
out,
he's
but
not. He really isn't.
he's not a world championship or he's not. I wouldn't even argue, to be fair, that he's a wingman. He is capable of delivering performances on a one-off basis, maybe once or twice a season, and that is it.
Yeah.
And that's the problem that Aston Martin will have.
Yeah, he's not going to be delivering the constructors' titles anymore. Certainly won't be delivering the driver's title if he's alongside anyone in the top 10 of the grid.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a shame to say it because, like you say, he's had flashpoints in his career where he has delivered really good performances. But it's interesting that they are still holding on to him when these flashpoints, as you say, are so few and far between. I just think now is time. Now is as we're going into 2025, 26, and they're getting Adrian Newey on board. Now is time to have two drivers that can deliver those results consistently and really show that you are serious about coming to the top of the standings on both levels. Lawrence Stroll basically said when he got into sport, once I'm hooked on something, I win. Like I do everything to win, and having your son drive around in a car as a hobby to be one day Formula One world champion when he's displayed that it probably won't happen. You've got all the data. The fans have got enough in front of them to show, okay, this guy isn't it. This guy isn't it. No matter what car we put him in, the driver next to him will probably do a better job, unless we, you know, we don't get a very good driver beside him. But his performances against Sebastian Vettel, I don't know if they're very comparative when you look at when Vettel's checked out of Formula One and then all of a sudden just started delivering these amazing performances. Like, I don't know. I don't know what happened with Sebastian Vettel in terms of the drop off from 2019 onwards. But yeah, I don't think we can base Lance Stroll's overall performance off beating Sebastian Vettel. Only 21-19.
No, we can't, and I don't. I'm just saying that there's an argument to be had from
It's a
people
statistic to
from the
look at.
team. From the team, that'll be the go-to for people to come out with. Oh, he did this there, and he was this good here, and I think those are the points of views that people will put across to try and justify it. And I don't think it's justifiable anymore. I think it is time to move it on. But those are the arguments that will be made. And I think if you don't look at them and you don't inform yourself as to the reasoning behind why you got those results, then you'd go, oh yeah, okay, that's I understand. Whereas me and you probably think, well, actually, we all know Vettel at that point had checked out.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly. Let's report on. Let's cover the reported news this week where McLaren and Mercedes have basically been absolved of the flexi wing dilemma where Red Bull both people just say Red Bull, but it was actually Red Bull and Ferrari that reported to the FIA that there is something off with the front wings of the Mercedes and the McLaren. I don't know if you've not seen the onboard shots, have you?
no.
Basically, the onboard shots, there's a split from where the nose is for the people listening, where the nose is on the car. Across the top of the front wing, there is a split along the front wing, and the disparity between especially the McLaren, the Mercedes flexed a little bit, but on the higher loads going down the straights of Monza, the McLaren is just dipping. The front wing on the left hand side of the left is dipping underneath drastically to the point where you would call that a flexi wing. However, the FIA have said that all 2024 cars front wings are compliant with the 2024 regulations. Now, that statement in itself is kind of worded a bit funny, isn't it? What do you think about that? Do you think the FIA needs to be stricter on these things? They are using still static tests to measure these cars
Yeah, this is the thing,
complaints.
isn't it? They've obviously found a loophole somewhere.
Yeah,
I haven't seen the onboard shots. I don't think I've seen them. I'd be
yeah,
lying to you if I could say that I've absolutely seen. I don't remember seeing them. I remember the talk about it in the week. If the FIA are going to turn around and go that they're all compliant, then it's one of those things where even if it looks so blatantly true that it's not compliant. What are
yeah.
we supposed to? As you said, they're using static tests, so I don't think
Yeah,
they
they're
can.
using
Is there any way
static
they can
tests
test
and they're
them?
basically using like sandbags and stuff like that to test how like Newton meters of pressure on the front wings. That's how they're measuring it. But it's very evident from the camera shots that I know that I'm a Mercedes fan and I will always point out my bias. But the Mercedes is ever so marginal, and I know that the rule in question is 5 millimeters. And the Mercedes does flex, but I would say it's 5 millimeters. If you compare it to the Ferrari and the Red Bull, though, those are basically static. It's if you look at the McLaren and the Mercedes, they're obviously aware that those wings flex because of how static Red Bulls and Ferraris is. Um, I don't understand how they've got that data on the McLaren though, that camera shot, and then it must be more than 5 millimeters. I can't imagine it's quite dramatic. If it falls like 4.99999 millimeters, it's a very impressive.
Is it a loophole? Is it a possibility that it's a loophole, or is it just because it's in the regulations? It's meant to be a case of X, Y, and Z. Is it because it's under? Isn't it because is it moving under of its own accord? Is there something like that in the regulations where that's where it would therefore be illegal? Is it not a case of moving aero or something like that? I forget the term. It's something aero. I forget it, but I know what I'm trying to say. Because I don't know if it would be a simple case of them being able to turn around and go absolutely categorically, this is breaking the rules here, and then being able to turn and go, actually, you need to change that for the next race.
Yeah, there's a very wordy rule on it. It's Article 3.15.5. It says any part of the trailing edge of any front wing flap may deflect no more than 5 millimeters when measured along the loading axis. When a 60 Newton point load is uh, applied normal to the flap. So
So are they trying to argue that it's more than 60 Newton meter points to the flat? I don't know. Obviously, you'd think if it's that cut and dry and it's that obvious from a camera shot that the FIA could determine, well, actually, you can't do that. But we all know sometimes the FIA don't like to jump in every time
it's
and change
interesting that
things
they don't like
mid-season.
to jump in every time, isn't it? Because they're so specific about the 0.01 wear on planks and Williams being out of the floor being out by zero point 0.0 a fraction of a millimeter. Um, but yet, when there's an obvious deviation from the rules or what looks like an obvious deviation, you don't clarify on why that car is compliant either. It's very there's no what everyone argues about the FAA is there's no transparency. When they do say that a car is compliant, they don't say why it's compliant, which is always very interesting. You think that they'd point out, okay, you've seen this, or whoever has seen this, it's actually perfectly fine because X, Y, Z. There's no report on that. They just say it's all good. You don't need to worry about it. Let the higher ups deal with that. You don't worry about it. It's compliant. But nobody actually gets a report on as to why it's compliant, which kind of makes you lose confidence in them a little bit because it's almost as if they've not given it the time of day.
Yeah, it's the lack of transparency, as you say, is the issue.
Yeah,
This front wing thing, if it drags on, people are talking about it more and more, then they'll have to do something about it. If you're saying from what you've seen, it looks more like the McLaren's the one which is the obvious deviation, whereas Mercedes is arguable,
yeah.
then you'd think that they'd talk
It's
to
very
McLaren about
small.
it. The thing is with the FIA is they don't. If you remember the Ferrari thing with the engines going into 2020, and there was a behind closed doors agreement
Yeah,
Nothing got out to the media. Nothing. We
nothing.
never knew exactly what the Ferrari did. It was just something to do with their fuel system, where they were pumping more fuel, or they were doing something completely dodgy that was gaining them more speed.
They
It
were
was an
tricking
open
the
secret in the
sensor.
paddock.
They were tricking the
Yeah,
sensor to basically think that a certain amount of fuel was passing through into the combustion bay, but it wasn't. They were basically leaking it another through another way, and allowing more fuel to be burned at once, thus giving them more speed on the straights.
yeah. So they allowed that to be settled behind closed doors. Obviously, Ferrari in 2020 paid a huge penalty for it, but they don't seem to do these things mid-season.
No,
They don't like that. That wasn't done and changed and drop off from 2019 to 20. It was night and day. They didn't change that until the end of that season. You'd think that if it's something like a front wing, it's that obvious. It's not hideable. You'd go, well, actually, that's wrong. But if you think back through history, Formula One 2010, with that Red Bull floor, the Red Bull floor that was blatantly illegal, they allowed them to keep running it at Monaco. They ran it in Monaco. They won the race, and then got to Canada and they went, well, actually, now you can't use that floor, but you can keep the points from the race we were investigating it before, and that was very, very instrumental in Red Bull winning that championship. They don't like to do things there and then.
yeah,
So it's very much a case of no one really knows what the FIA is playing at.
which
No, I
is
don't think even the FIA know.
kind of broken because you'd think if the FIA was a bit more brutal in the sense that they'd action these things straight away, then the teams would naturally make a contingency plan. Okay, we're gonna deviate from the rules slightly. We're gonna read them or misinterpret them because I don't think anyone is out and out cheating with these things. They try to misinterpret the rules in a specific way, and then the FIA will then turn around and say, "Actually, your misinterpretation is a blatant breakage of the rules." That's what usually happens. I think with Ferrari, that is a bit more of a blatant cheating, like tricking a sensor to do so.
Yeah,
To do that, that is basically cheating. But most of the time, it's like we're 0.3 millimeters out, we've not noticed it, or the rules say this, and we can do that to circumvent it, like the double diffuser, which was deemed legal in 2009 on Braun. That's a correct misinterpretation of the.
yeah.
But if the
I don't
FIA
know.
was more brutal, the teams would make a contingency plan for scenarios like this rather than shrug the shoulders, say we didn't know it were illegal. If we can't run this floor, we don't have a spare floor or whatever they would say to get out of it.
Yeah,
The-
we'll see. Obviously, if it's going to kick up a stink at Baku as well, then it will be it, it won't be arguable anymore. People will be able to go, okay, that's two races in a row. There's something really off with your front wing, and enough times people will turn around. Especially think about it, if Mercedes turn around and go, well, okay, well our wing is legal and you can see it here, but that McLaren one's even more dodgy than ours.
yeah.
I mean, at that point, there's even more grounds for them to turn around and say something about the McLaren front wing. They might not want to. Is the thing which we need to question here. They might not want to. They might not want to do anything about it until the end of the season and just cut off that loophole if it is deemed that it's a loophole that they've exploited.
Well, they did say that
It,
the wings are compliant with the 2024 regulations. They didn't say the wings are compliant with the regulations. To me, that statement in itself kind of lends a little bit to we are making a change. I know it's a 2024 car. I know that it's very obvious that the rules in question are the 2024 rules. It's just interesting that that statement has the inclusion of the year in which the rules are regulated. Um, but yeah, I can't see that wing being wholly compliant unless they can prove that 60 Newton meters of torque or whatever 60 newtons of pressure have been put on that, more than that has been put on that wing for it to deviate so much
yeah.
outside of 5 millimeters. I don't know. Any further thoughts on it just before we move on?
No, it could just be an ingenious piece of thing by McLaren. Apart from that, if it's that obvious that everyone can see it, then it probably will be changed by after Baku, you think. But
Yeah.
anyway, nah, not too much to say.
Um, Obviously, during the week we had, or during last week after the race, we had that Kevin Magnussen was out for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. He's been replaced by Ollie Berman, which we all knew. Everyone knew it was going to happen, but it couldn't be set in stone straight away because you can't just say this driver that is actually this team's driver is driving for our team. You have to have these things signed over and pen to paper. It has now been confirmed. Just give me your brief thoughts on this because we've obviously covered it last week because we everyone knew we covered it last week. But what's your thoughts on that?
It's good for Oliver Bearman. It's good for all the British Formula One fans. If he does a good job, it'll be interesting to see if it's closer to Hulkenberg than Magnussen normally is. It'll be interesting to see if they just leave Bearman in for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
I would at this point, and no one seems to think that's a possibility. I would leave him in. I just I can't imagine why you wouldn't at this point. It just makes no sense. If that's your future, just give him the run of the race to the end of the year.
It'll probably be because there's no loophole to get Kevin Magnussen out of his seat in his contract. There usually is,
There's
but
always a loophole. There's always a loophole, especially if you're Haas.
do we think Haas want to pay him off though? Because that would usually be, and then wouldn't Kevin Magnussen have to accept being paid off?
If you're Kevin Magnussen, do you really want to race to the end of the year?
Yeah.
You would if you're Kevin. I mean, yeah, but he's already
He's not
left Formula One
retiring.
before. He's already left Formula One before, though, hasn't he? He's not going to another team. No one wants him in the team, and it's unfortunate because I think he's actually a decent driver. Probably this generation of cars, it suited him at first. I think he's probably gone more and more toward Hulkenberg in development, and then obviously Hulkenberg's jumping ship. I, I would just get rid of Magnussen and put Bearman in.
Yeah.
It's a cutthroat business, and I mean, I don't think Bearman's anything special, but I'd still rather, if I'm a Haas, I'd go, right, okay, well, jump in. Let's get you ready for next year.
Yeah, let's get you ready for next year. That's the point. It's not about Kevin Magnussen's performance or ability. It's more about striking while the iron's hot, getting him in there, getting him the practice in for the next season. At the moment, Haas isn't is on the fringes of the points now. At the start of the season, they were kind of picking up points, and they've now fallen back a little bit to the fringes. I think Nico Hulkenberg had sixth place 3 times in a row. In qualifying, I think it were. I'm not sure. Oh, it was sixth place finishes, weren't it?
I think so.
3 times in a row, and ahead of Perez most of them. But anyway, I'm going to stop bashing Perez. But yeah, it'd be good for Berman if he was there for the end of the season, until the end of the season, to get him prepared for 2025. And yeah, Magnussen is out. Like, there's no point keeping him around, as you say. I agree with you. Formula One is a brutal business, but at the same time, I don't think they're going to be able to get him out of his contract. I think he very much wanted to be a Formula One driver until he had the opportunity to win a championship. I don't think that's not going to come around now. There's no offer that's going to come around for him. It's going to get him a world driver's title, but I think he'll try to sit it out to the end of the season and see if he can put in a stellar performance that's going to raise an eyebrow here or there that'll then give him a drive. But it's doubtful that it would even happen. Moving on from Bearman in Baku, shall we talk about Audi next and how the rumours have been circulating that Sebastian Vettel could be potentially driving for the German outfit come 2025.
Please. Yeah. So the rumours were circulating, weren't they? A few things here and there. It was interesting. Helmut Marko came out at a very similar time to when Binotto said that they need to make a decision fairly soon. Marko came out and said it was his understanding that he wanted to get back into the sport. I think that's probably the most likely destination. There has been more rumours recently. It's probably going to be between either Pourchaire, Bottas, or the fella who we talked about last week from the F2.
Bortoleto.
I think it's probably going to, the way it's going at the minute, I'd say Vettel's on the fringes. But if you're wanting to go into 25 and 26 and go in with a little bit of consistency, a driver lineup that will give you certainties, Hulkenberg and Vettel is by far your best shout. You don't want to be going in crashing cars. You don't want to be testing rookies. Bortoleto has obviously proven that he's second. He's only second in the championship, but he's proven to be a good driver. He's part of the McLaren Junior the Drivers Academy. Yeah, I don't know. I'd want to see Vettel in there selfishly from a sort of biased point of view. Maybe we should ask your Twitter AI like we did for Colapinto when he told you before anyone else knew.
It was only just the rumors on Colapinto. It wasn't saying if anyone's got a definitive answer or not. But I think Sebastian Vettel, as you said, is your best shout for that car. Hulkenberg's already confirmed in there. Get Sebastian Vettel in. All German driver lineup for a now German team or a German branded car. It's a statement, isn't it? It's a statement of your intentions going forward. Got a 4-time world champion. His seasons, from 2019 onwards. Let's not forget them beginning seasons in Ferrari. He was absolutely on it, and it was only Ferrari's lack of development throughout a season that let him down. I'd say, in many instances. I mean, 2018, for example, where Ferrari just went off. I think he could really bring life to that team, especially being hungry to get back into Formula One. We've seen what he's like when he's got the mentality of a Formula One driver. Sometimes, it's dipped off a bit when he's been absolutely smashed by Charles Leclerc too much. But
Don't remind me.
after saying that, though, I mean, that team was very much, just to touch on that a little bit, that team was very much Charles Leclerc's once Charles Leclerc started performing well. That team, they so quickly switched to Charles Leclerc, and I don't think they gave Vettel enough credit for how close he got that car in the beginning half of the season. I think they focused too much on Vettel's performance rather than their own performance in that team. Like, there's a lot of moving parts in a team, as we touched on before, and I think Ferrari are the ones that didn't challenge for the championship, and I don't think it was anything to do with Sebastian Vettel at all. That he very much dragged that team through some first halves of the season, and then obviously they were very much designing the cars for straights, though, which was very interesting.
Look. I love Sebastian Vettel. It's evident by just this camera shot alone. Okay, but 2018 was that Ferrari. We can say what we like. We know where it went wrong. I don't want to touch on it, but we all know as fans of Formula One exactly what race and exactly where it all went very much awry. Okay, from then onward, he was a different driver.
I don't think one race does that to you. You can speculate
It mentally shattered him.
You can speculate on the impact of that race. However, I'm not even a Sebastian Vettel fan, but I will say not one race effectually. It was a big mess up.
That was the end of the World Championship for him in a Ferrari, and he knew it. At that point, he was over, and that's got to be shattering to the fact that he knew full well he just won in Britain the race before, and that he put it in the wall while your competitors come through the field to win. That broke him. He wasn't the same driver after that. It's a shame. It is, and I think he could get back to it if he was given the right tools to. But immediately in that next year, he went up against Leclerc, who wasn't a Kimi Raikkonen, who wasn't going to just roll over and happy to drive the car. And he wanted to prove himself, and he did. He got very close to Leclerc, and if things had gone a little bit differently that year, we talk about the DNF in Russia that wasn't his fault, a few things that went awry for him, he would have actually beaten Leclerc. People like to remember the things, as we've said, like to remember the Aston Martin, the end of that 2020 season for Ferrari. But there were signs before that he was a different driver, and I think if you give him a world championship capable car or a car that can fight for podiums, we'd see a rejuvenated Sebastian Vettel that could deliver. But I'm not willing to just go, well, it's X, Y, and Z. He definitely took a down. He went on a downward cycle after that Hockenheim race.
Thought we weren't going to mention it. Yeah. Okay, I can kind of like hold to your point a little bit and be like, yeah, fair enough. It did change his attitudes but I don't think so dramatically that it affected his performance for the remainder of his Ferrari stint, and then leading into his Aston Martin stint as well. I just think that when the car isn't under him, he's not at one with the car. He can't get at one with the car. He can't. It's very much like once that car is developed away from him, not he's not the same driver. I think that is what happened, especially with coming in and then taking control of that team as he did. Borsaletto, do you want to just touch on that briefly? I know you mentioned it before. It was, he's doing great performances in the F2. You mentioned last week about his performance coming up through the field to finish, what, second was it? After
First,
first. So yeah, he won that race. Sorry. Do you think, okay, if not Sebastian Vettel, and we're saying that is the perfect thing, who do you think is the perfect driver? Do you think Borsaletto is the go-to? Okay, we're not going for wise and proven. We're now going for unproven and fast.
well, he's going to get a spot in F1 sooner or later. By the sound of it, he's a McLaren Junior driver. You'd think at some point he'd get in. Um, I'd let him. I'd put him in the car. It's for me. I would have to just leave Bottas now. I think Bottas it's not horrific. It's not like he can get more out of the car, but it is just a case of you taking a seat. You obviously don't really think that 26 is going to be an option. You're not driving the wheels off the car. We don't hear from Bottas trying to compete. It's not like he's out here saying, "Oh, I'm going to trying to compete for race wins anymore." He's very much just in a camp of I'm just got a cool mullet and I've got a mustache. That's it. That's Bottas at
Yeah,
the minute. I'd put either Portier or Vettel or any of them. They're all good drivers, but I'd probably go with Bortoletto. I think based on that.
there's a lot of these young drivers that aren't getting into Formula One, and it's kind of like it's a shame because not to be harsh to the 20 drivers on the grid, but there are drivers that you could easily pluck out and replace them with rookies to try and see what the worst, see if the performances in Formula 2 actually do match up to a Formula 1 standard. It's interesting though to see that it's just not happening. Formula 1 is failing. It's rookie drivers coming up through the ranks of Formula 2, a series which is designed to be a stepping stone to Formula 1, to show your worth, to then get you into Formula 1. A lot of the super license is based around Formula 2. The point system that gets you ready for Formula 1. What would you do to change that?
I mean, honestly, we need another team on the grid. We need either an 11th team or we need the top three teams are allowed to run a third car. I don't know. I don't know. Look, we can just look at the facts a second for the drivers that haven't got into Formula One. So Drugovic won the championship for F2. He
Yep.
didn't get in. Piastri had to take a year out after he won it. Did Porsche win it last year? I think Porsche won it last
Porsche
year,
won it
right?
last year, albeit though
Porsche.
after 3 seasons in F2. So that may be why he's not
Okay,
looked in so
that's fair
favourably.
enough. I get that. But Porsche also doesn't have sponsorships to be able to get him into the best teams. And that's something he's been kicking up a stink about recently is the fact he hasn't actually got the money to offer to be able to get himself into a Formula One car, the sponsorships or the backing. So
Yeah,
that's one thing there. Hajar is not even. I think Hajar's winning the championship in
winning the
F2 this year.
championship at the moment.
He's not even mentioned.
No.
No one has mentioned his name with any going seat. Nothing. So we can say, oh, it's this, oh, it's that, oh, it's a case of X, Y, and Z. He has not been even been questioned to get a seat.
Do you
So
think though that adding an extra team is not just going to create the same problem a few years from now? We'll get drivers in, they'll stay in the seats, it'll be stagnant. They've got performances like this isn't again when I say these things about these drivers, it's not a knock to them, but stagnant. You know what you're going to get from these drivers, like your Valtteri Bottas's, like your Lance Strolls, like your Guan Yu Zhou's. Are we not just going to end up with those again in the 11th team a few years from now? And then there'll be F2 rookies coming through again that will not get a seat because teams are playing it safe, or old drivers coming back into the sport that have taken a year out. It just seems like there needs to be a bit more of a solid, okay, this is a rule that is set. You need to run a rookie, and I don't think that should take the second seat of a car. But as you said before, maybe the top 3 teams can run a third car. However,
I've just had an idea actually. So you know with the prize funding of how the distribution of the prize money gets distributed out. So what I've just said about Porsche not having money for sponsors,
yeah.
allocating a pot of money for a driver to be able to basically have backing to go into a team. So say the winner of Formula 2 gets X, Y, and Z that's used, that money will go to that team if they take him on.
So an incentive to sign the
An
driver on.
incentive, and it's something that's guaranteed. I don't know how much it would have to be. I don't know if but that's the only thing in my head where I can think. Well, no one's going to run a third team.
It's
It's
too
going to
much
cause
money,
too many.
and
It's too
it's
much money. Sorry, third car, and it's too much money, and it's not gonna. There was a thing that you could have done if you introduced a cost cap, and without having to lay off members of staff, you could have gone, oh, okay, well, you could run a third car outside of the cost cap, but it has to be rookies.
this is what I was saying. I was saying before we got on the podcast, I think a few days ago, that if every team run a third car, and then we increase the cost cap to allow that third car, but it has to be like there's so many loopholes in Formula One, and they tie them off to introduce something like a third team, and then start messing around with how the budget works. It opens up so many more loopholes. I'm not blind to that when I say this. It just needs to be like a mandated rule that to be in Formula One, you need to run a third team and run a third car. Sorry, and to do that, we will either fund it for the first season, like Formula One can fund it, or it because obviously if we only do it on 3 teams, it wouldn't be beneficial to those teams because Formula One would have to say this car cannot score points in the championship. Then does that car then take points away from the other teams when it gets into the top
Yeah.
10? There's so many
So
things to consider with it.
we're in the wacky warehouse of ideas now,
Yes, we
aren't we?
are. Yeah.
And I think when we're saying it, the most likely option is to run sort of how they've got that F1 Academy for the women. If they did something very similar where it's team sponsored cars, you have to have your sponsors on, you have to pay money into those cars. Not maybe F2, like where it's that's basically what it is, but have it so it's basically you're backing those drivers in that, for example. The winner of that is guaranteed a spot somewhere. But again, but there's no way that any team can guarantee it. I think the most likely option for the here and now is the Formula One prize money gets adjusted so that teams
Yeah.
have an incentive to pick someone up.
Yeah.
If you pick up the winner of the Formula 2 World Championship, you're getting this much money
Yeah.
allocated to you. And eventually, there will be a flip side of that where you'll see drivers that
Or
deserve to
more
be in the
wind tunnel
sport out
time.
of seats. Or more winter time. But I think that's probably the most likely thing they could do is
Yeah.
by putting in a prize money aspect of going, you get this for doing this.
Yeah.
Um,
A
because no
monetary
one's talking about
incentive.
Hajar.
Yeah, no
No
one's
one's
talking about
talking about him.
Hajar. Nobody's talking about Drugovich as well with
It's mad.
with his Formula 2
Madness.
championship win and Teo Pocher. He's been kind of linked going to Audi. There's a potential for Audi, but at the same time, no sponsors. And he's in, like you said, he's been kicking up a stink about how he said, what do I have to do to get into Formula One? I've done everything possible to get into Formula One now. There's nothing else I can do. And I think for these rookies as well, once they've done Formula 2 and they've won the championship, they've got to keep busy until and how do you keep your name out there as well for these teams to even consider you? Because all it takes is one good performance from somebody that reserve drives for a team that's a reserve driver, and then somebody dips out for one race. All it takes is one good performance from somebody that's not even won an F2 championship for that team to be like, that may be our driver, rather than considering, but he did get beaten in the F2 championship by.
Yeah,
It's
you could
crazy,
have the
isn't it?
right you could have the right people behind you to be able to get into Formula One. That's the thing, and unless I guess you could say that those drivers haven't absolutely blown away the competition.
No,
But
they
neither
haven't.
is Bortoletto. Bortoletto's second. And it's a case of going, well, he's been linked with a seat. Other drivers aren't. Other drivers that have won the championship on their second go, their third go, they're not getting linked with the seat at all. Not given a chance. Whereas drivers such as Logan Sargent, um, it's not a diss on him, but Nick De Vries as well. He did his one race in that Williams, and all of a sudden he was being linked with the AlphaTauri. He got the AlphaTauri drive, and then he dumped himself out of the sport. You've There's got to be some sort of financial motivation for a team to pick up a driver. So a Haas will go, okay, well, we'll pick up this driver. Or say even an Audi will go, oh, well, we're going to get an extra, or maybe even allow an extra bit in the cost cap.
Yeah.
If you pick up a driver, you're allowed to pick up an extra 5 million in the cost cap.
Yeah. Now
That is a real incentive, even
that is
for the
a
top
real
teams.
incentive. Yeah. Maybe that is the answer to it, because then they really are incentivized. But then I think that could create a really strong grid by allowing these F2 rookies through and getting rid of the drivers that we know what they've got, what their potential, what they're going to deliver, and rather than testing something. I think that's everything covered. While we're on Audi, obviously Jonathan Wheatley is going to Audi to be team principal, and we mentioned before how Newey has been signed to Aston Martin. There's these big moves out of Red Bull at the moment as they struggle with their car. Should we just touch on going into this next race, going into Baku? Where do we think Red Bull will be? And also, do you think that these key players, because they're out of the team now, but I don't think that's had an immediate impact. I don't think Adrian Newey leaving the team has had this impact right now. Maybe it's had an impact of, maybe he could have offered a solution to the problems. But I think that he has been a part of the problems. He has designed the car, after all. It's his car.
Yeah, I just think he's probably demoralised the entire team. If you're seeing that your driver is obviously your main driver, the driver that's led you to 3 world championships in a row, he's kicking up a storm. Adrian Newey that's left, Jonathan Wheatley that's left. You've got all the stuff that happened at the start of the year with the team principal that we won't go over, but we all know the stories. That team's falling apart. It's been so stable for such a long time. I think that's probably the issues they've got. Everyone's now starting to drift away. That's going to be a massive demoralising factor if you're just a guy on the factory floor making these parts as you're told to make them, and you're realising, well, we were the dominant car 12 months ago. Now look at us. Now we're falling this far down. I think when they get to Baku, they could genuinely find themselves anywhere in that top 8. They could be at the back of it. They could be at the front of it. We don't know. They don't seem to know where they could be, and that's the thing. It seems evident there's been an issue with the end of their stints in their tyre life. They're losing a lot of time at the end of their stints compared to their rivals,
which is very
but there are
interesting,
more
considering that
yeah.
that it was the best on its tyres for a very long time. How does a team flip like that when you've got such a crucial understanding of the tyres and how they work and how they operate and how to get them into the window, as Red Bull did? How all of a sudden are you chewing up your tyres to the point where, like, you're then losing in the second half of your stints to a McLaren? Albeit that McLaren is now wholly dominant, or for the moment it is wholly dominant. They won in Netherlands, and they came second and third when they should have come first. Second and third when they should have come first in Monza. How does that happen?
It could be these breaks, couldn't it? It could be they've been caught doing a few tricks here and there. It could be a multitude of different reasons.
A multitude. Who knows?
It could be.
Not
it could
us.
Be well, you'd like to think they were doing some sneaky
You don't
stuff.
fall off. You don't have a 1 second swing from one year to the next. That Red Bull was 0.6 faster or 0.5 faster than the McLaren this time last year, and now it is 5
Someone's been
slower.
reading David Valence's Twitter feed, hasn't he?
Of course. Speaking of which,
I know, mate. I know.
Speaking of which, if we stick on the statistics for a second and we talk about that McLaren and how dominant it is, Lando Norris has not gained a single place this entire season.
What?
He has not gained a place in the first lap this entire season.
In the first lap?
The first lap.
Oh, I can believe that. I can
Not
believe that.
one place.
Oh, yeah, but thing is, as much as we mocked him for losing a position off the line, he didn't lose a position off the line at Monza. He just waited a few more corners later. He's like, fine, I did my job, but now I lose 2 positions after that. I don't know. We've got our opinions, haven't we? I think
Should
if
we
this is
just
this is
touch
the
on them for a second, though? I know you want to, from your statement there, you want to avoid giving your opinion, but
I don't want to avoid giving my opinion. It's just a case of I don't necessarily believe that he's. I changed my opinion slightly after Zandvoort for the first time in about 5 years, but I didn't think he was a world championship caliber driver in the sense of is he a Verstappen? In my opinion, I thought not. He's not as fast as Leclerc, in my opinion, and he isn't as dominant as Hamilton would be in a team. I think those are the three drivers, and you could argue Alonso, I wouldn't anymore, but those are the three drivers, in my opinion, that you could go, they're world championship caliber drivers, right? The thing with Norris is that he has so many world championship caliber qualities, and then when it comes down to it, he's made too many mistakes. No one's talked about the lockups that he was making into the same corner where he lost the position at the second chicane. No one's talked about that. No one's talked about the fact that he didn't manage to keep up with Piastri on the stint. He isn't dominating his teammate in the hunt for a world championship. Everyone's talked in the media. It gets back to the drivers. No one's talked about the fact he's had a sniff now of the world championship, and he was second to his teammate. He wasn't the best McLaren driver that weekend. You have to be the best McLaren driver if you're going to be in the hunt for that championship. You have to be the best driver in the car.
yeah, absolutely, and it's very telling of how the season will end. I think the fact that he didn't capitalize on Verstappen being off, or not Verstappen being off, because he finished sixth in a car that is, at the very back of that pack of that race anyway in Monza. I don't think Lando Norris delivered at all on what he should have done in terms of Monza. He should have either won the race or at least finished ahead of his teammate on merit. And the fact that people turn around and say that Oscar Piastri should have given the position back, he should have done. He absolutely should have. McLaren should have ordered them to swap the cars, but he shouldn't have had to because he should have been behind in terms of Norris. Norris should have had Piastri behind the entire time, the entire race, if he's serious about winning this championship. And at the moment, he's done the bare minimum to even scrape into a potential to win the championship. If he keeps on scoring these 8 points over Verstappen, he's done it by 1 point. But
he's capable of delivering special drives.
he is.
He's a special driver. He can do. I just don't think yet he's not world champ. This isn't the year for me, which has made a standout of your world championship caliber. You've got a way to go. You've won 2 races. In many times you should have won more. McLaren have done you dirty a few times. I grant you.
How many more seasons?
Not, what of having an opportunity?
How many more seasons do we think it will take Lando Norris to become a world championship caliber driver? Because in my opinion, harsh one, but our Sebastian Vettels, our Lewis Hamiltons, our Fernando Alonso's, our Max Verstappen's all showed their quality in their early years of Formula One. Norris has had his early years of Formula One, and albeit has never really is me and you both maybe have our opinions which don't lend in his favor. He's to me and you, he's not really. We've always said that. I don't. If you put I'd said like flat out, Lando Norris to win a championship has to be in a dominant car. That's what I said. He's now got the dominant car, and he still might not win the championship. But obviously, Verstappen did have his 7 wins early on. I just think that it's not happening for Lando Norris. That is my opinion. I think Oscar Piastri has shown that he has the ability to take it over. He is still slower than Lando Norris, and he's head to heads against Lando. He's not winning any of them.
There has been an uptake in form mid-season.
This is it.
He's won them. He's got more points than any driver.
Yep.
I think since Monaco. Piastri's done a great job. Now the issue here is it's like I love to use the word perception as we've said many a time.
Yeah.
Piastri still isn't as fast as, or at least as consistent as Norris.
No, he's not.
Norris is better on the tyres, and it's the stints, it's the issues that at the end of the stints, Piastri seems to suffer more. Monza has always been, if we're fair, a dodgier track for Lando Norris. So I can give him some sort of leeway for not. It was within a tenth or something of an average lap time of Piastri, but he still wasn't faster. He has 8 races. I think it's still 8 races left at the end of the year.
Yeah, 8 races to go.
8 races, and he needs to win 5 to be able to match Verstappen's winning tally to be able to get to 7. I think it's possible with the car, but everyone could bring upgrades. And what McLaren have shown is that they, with their wind tunnel, every time they've brought an upgrade, it's worked exactly how they thought it would work. That's the team which is now on the uptaking form at the end of the year. If he wins at Baku with a very short run into turn 1, if he's on pole position, if he's lucky enough this time to be able to keep it, get pole, stay ahead, we could be turning around and going, but it is only like 40 something points, and then it will be all changed again. But if he wins it this year, he will have looked into it in some ways, which is a harsh reality, but it's not dominant, is it? It won't go down as one of the best championships of all time.
Yeah, the fact that he hasn't gained a place on the first lap, we can joke about it, but he is there in the championship, and he is the only one there in the championship, really, logically speaking, that can actually win the championship. He's done that on merit. It's just a shame. I think a lot of people that are criticizing him is just it's that the fact that it could be so much closer, and it could have been so much more, and it's himself that's letting him. He's letting himself down. Is what everyone's sentiment seems to be. It's the potential is there. We see it. It could have happened, but for some reason or another, he just does not deliver when he needs to.
He's just missing something. It's like
He
he's
is.
missing a little bit more of the cutthroat ability to be able to turn around and go, no, I'm doing this. Like Verstappen turns around and goes, well, I'm not giving a position to Perez
Yeah.
for 5th. For 2nd in the championship and for 5th in the race. And he doesn't have the ability to turn around for a race win and go and push his teammate off the track, or basically break to a point where it's going to be have to force Piastri to back out of a move. He doesn't have that about him. He needs to realise this is your chance. You might not have this in 25.
I think that has to
You
come
might.
natural, though. I think that ability to do. I don't think he can now turn around as a person and be ruthless. I don't think that comes naturally to somebody, and you can just switch it on. I don't think he can do that. And if he does switch it on, I can imagine it'll actually be a detriment to his races. I think if Lando Norris all of a sudden switches and starts to be a bit more brutal, I think it'll all go wrong. I think he'll crash out. I think he'll lose points doing that. I think it'll be half-hearted and it won't be calculated, because that has to come naturally to a driver. In my opinion, I think it has to come naturally to the point
I can
where
get behind the opinion. I can get the reasoning for the opinion too. I just think back to drivers like Vettel turned it on and turned it off. I think it's very, when
but
your back's against
that
the
was
wall,
there for
you're
Vettel at the start.
So it was there for Vettel from the start, and I give you that. That's a fair enough point. I think when your back's against the wall as a driver, you're capable of going to a different limit than what you could do normally. And I'd like to be able to think that Norris, with his back against the wall, realizing this could be his one chance to win a world championship, will go to that extra level where he can be forced to have to make that decision of pushing to the limit. He hasn't proven it yet. He hasn't shown it yet. But I'm not going to write it off completely and hope. I think it could be a case of, if you're in the hunt for a championship like that, the pressure will be on you that much that if you can go to that extra limit, that extra level, to be able to push it to the absolute limit, I think it's a possibility that you can do that. And I get what you mean. Sometimes you have to be, being cutthroat isn't always something which you can gain.
Yeah.
But I think that if you're at an elite level of a sport, the highest point for your one dream, you're not going to just let it pass by willy-nilly anymore. I think you will have realised now this is it. And I hope you're wrong, but you could well be right.
I hope I'm wrong too. I don't want his downfall. For me, like, I want a close championship fight, and to be honest with you, I would rather that Lando Norris win this championship over Verstappen. That way, we've got another name in the annals of history. be able to, to say Norris won that one. It was close. It was well fought, and he earned it. But at the moment, he's not doing that. And you talk about pressure. In the past, Norris has displayed that pressure can't handle it. It doesn't mix with Lando Norris. Oil and water, they do not go together. The fact that Max Verstappen has maintained such a lead in the championship, even in cases where the car hasn't been there, or the when they took the grid penalty and ended up, because of an engine, ended up at the back and still increased his lead over Norris. How does this happen? How do you allow this to happen? And you say, hopefully he realizes, hopefully he should have realized many moons ago that this is his opportunity. And had he done that, and had he outscored Verstappen when he should have done, this championship would have been a lot closer, a lot sooner for him, for that penny to drop. And it hasn't done. The penny hasn't dropped yet because he allowed Oscar Piastri to send one up on the outside of turn 4 at Monza and allow him to then lose a place to Charles Leclerc, who went on to win that race. And Norris finished behind his teammate. I just don't think he's got it in him. I don't think he's got the minerals to do it. I just think that it's just over for him. It's just, I think Max Verstappen is not as far off as we think. I don't think that's the 4th slowest car on the grid. I think that was the 4th slowest car in Monza. In Netherlands, he finished 2nd. I don't think the car is that bad. And I think it will be proven right. Maybe not in Azerbaijan, maybe not in Singapore, because these are tracks that are also quite similar. But I think it will be proven throughout the remainder of the season as a whole. I don't think it's that far off. And for Norris to win the championship, he will have to put in some caliber drives and not just finish 3rd.
The poor guy. He's competing for a world championship, and then you've got Tom Archer in his loft.
In his loft.
Shouting him down, going, "We ain't got the minerals to do it, mate. He can't do it." It's like, oh, bless him.
Prove me wrong.
Look,
prove me wrong.
That's what you do. You're thinking, Tom Archer, I'm going to prove you wrong, mate.
Yeah, that's exactly. He's gonna watch this, and it's gonna
forget the millions of fans that love it.
It's gonna be a wake up call for him.
Forget the supermodel girlfriends that are on me like flies to a cow pat. Don't worry about that. I'm worried about Tom Archer on the Turn 1 Talk podcast.
I'll tell you what, he should be if he's going to win this championship. I would be. I would.
I want to see him win it.
I want to see him win it. I want to see him win it. I want to see him prove everyone. I want to see him prove me wrong. But so far,
next week,
before this championship became possible, we'd always said it, that he has to be in a wholly dominant car to win the championship. Now he's got one. At least prove us right in that respect.
Exactly. Well, next week he'll have seen this, and he's going to put Piastri in a wall.
Yeah,
and it's all thanks to you.
Yeah.
So don't worry about it. We're going to see the new Lando Norris. Horns going out of his head, the whole lot, mate. And it's all thanks to you.
I genuinely hope so.
But the horns come out of his head?
No, that he proves me wrong. And maybe theoretical, not theoretical. No, imaginary horns come out of his head.
Imaginary horns. Fair enough. Maybe extra error.
Yeah.
Puts his head down like
that. Yeah, and it just... Maybe that's why Hamilton's so quick. Airline. Anyway.
It didn't help Vettel, did it?
No, it didn't help Vettel. He got hair plugs though, didn't he? So.
Bless him.
Anyway, I think that about wraps it up for this week. We can't really speculate anymore. I think we've covered everything. Lando Norris needs to make a dramatic change, and Aston Martin are a looming giant, I'd say, is the summary of this entire
Lando
podcast.
Norris needs a 3rd bollock, and
open a dream.
And Aston Martin are making some good additions. That's the main talk.
That's the main takeaways. And Audi need to maybe move the base of operations to England.
Audi
are going to be serious.
Yeah, Audi are still a little bit too Swiss, a little bit too neutral for our liking.
Yeah. For the time being. Right. Thank you very much, everyone who watched and listened to the podcast or just listened. See you again next week after Baku. Bye-bye for now.